Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Hollywood Breaks. You'll enjoy this episode as we bring on special guest Sean McNulty from The Ankler and talked about his newsletter, The WAKEUP, and many things going on inside of Hollywood. So enjoy the show. And hello, Janice. You do your distribution on it every day, right? And it's a compilation.
Every weekday, yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
Wow. Monday to Friday.
Do you recognize patterns? If you're doing that same work every day, are you seeing kind of global bigger trends as you compile stories and kind of think through what's happening?
I mean, it's really more, it's not shocking, certainly. I mean, anything layoffs or, larger movements in the business are going to get a little more engagement out of it than, is it like today was Channing Tatum, takes Chris Evans' role, which is important, but it's not a business story. It's more of a, pop culture story. So the business stuff, it depends on the crowd you're talking about. I was doing it for not a general audience, but a free audience beforehand, which was definitely a wide mix. I mean, I kind of created it for executives and people in the know, but my mom's neighbor loved it. And I'm like, really? She's like, Janice loves your newsletter. And I'm like, okay,
sure.
Because people like to know. And I think I like to think I write it in a way that's accessible. And, Tim, back to your point about let me break this down for people who do know, but it's not to go into a long tirade about it, but just let me just clarify,
yeah.
What's Premier League? Okay. Premier League is what's the Champions League for soccer, which most people don't. They hear the term, oh my God, Champions League. Like, do you know what Champions League is? Because I didn't even know, sort of.
Right.
So then I was like, sidebar, if you need to know what this is, great. Okay, now we're back to the story. And if you know what it is, you can skip it. And if you don't, so I kind of take that approach to whatever it is, where I'm not just going to assume. I mean, I kind of assume ARPU, people know this because I write about it. My readers know what it is because I write about it so much. But even that's average revenue per user. Here's what this, just to remind you what that kind of stuff is. So I've kind of found that balance. But what moves stuff,
So it sounds like you're the critical thinker of entertainment news, so that you can say, wait a second, do we actually know what this means?
Let's
break this down for Janice. So Janice
the
understands.
Intermediary. Yeah, exactly. The intermediary between this, which everybody loves to talk about, but does everybody really know what this is? Or they just like to say the terms and not really know what the terms mean,
right?
Which we're all guilty of.
Right.
I've been guilty of. And Keith, as an exec, I come into it from an executive background, not a journalist background. So you kind of know, people really don't know what this is, even though they want to know. They want to seem like they're in the know about it. So let me just give you a little. I'm not saying you do know. I'm not saying you don't know. I'm just saying if you want it, here's this, and then we move on to whatever it might be. Versus trying to sound smart, for lack of a better term, of let me put all these big words and long sentences in. It's no, let me do the reverse of that. Put it in bullet point and do this, because that's a much easier way to digest it. Because I know that's how that's. In Keith, we've been we're in the business of communicating information to people,
right?
In a meeting, an executive, you ever been an executive? How much attention span you have with an executive to get your idea across? You want to send 3 paragraphs, or you want to send 3 bullet points, because what's going to get read. And your newsletter audience is not any different than any average executive in Hollywood.
So you're like the Cliff Notes of Hollywood.
Yes,
so that
that's exactly right.
So they can sound smart at the Monday morning meeting when they're waking everybody else up. There you go. I got it.
Exactly.
All flowing now.
Was of this in India, what's Disney Plus Hotstar? Define it. Literally, it's this. How did And I just kind of do refreshers and things like that, because you also don't remember. I'm a big media nerd, so I remember all this stuff, but I'm sure the average is what's that again? Who's this person?
The average people don't remember what you guys remember. You guys, you two are you have a memory.
Right. There's different tiers, so I don't spend too much time on it for people like Keith and myself, but I do want to remember you, Tim, and let me put a little bit in here just to get that
little bit of color and background.
Yep.
This is kind of going back to the original idea of the question too. Is I find this with Keith. I often kind of push you towards these kind of answers as well. You guys are so entrenched in the day-to-day of information, insider conversations. You're quick translators of what's happening. So I feel like you guys could know what's coming up sooner than an average viewer or an outsider or someone, even just someone trying to get started. And I'm imagining, Sean, if you're compiling every single day, you're seeing patterns that you could recognize, oh, I know what happens next, because you're going hey, I've seen this pattern before, and usually what happens next is these people get laid off, or And no
Well, it's
one's
not
announcing
just-
it, but you can see it sooner than later.
Sure. And it's not even just doing the newsletter, it's being an executive for 20 plus years in the business.
Sure.
We've
Yeah.
been through recessions. I can tell you
Mhm.
exactly how this goes. Everyone's like, oh, is there advertising pullback? I'm like, yeah, that's the first thing that gets cut. Brand advertising every 2002, 2008, which recession you want to talk about? It's not any different. It's where people go. If they have a bad slate, what goes first? The production people, the marketing people, every time. So it's not like oh my God, why is the head of Netflix marketing out? I don't know. What do you think? It's like, because they're looking around, they're not going to fire Ted. They're not going to, it's like, so you're out,
A, B, C, D.
You're first.
You're
first.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not necessarily me writing that brings that. It's just me being a media nerd for 25 years and reading the trades every day for that long. You just, and understanding it and, just bring a study to it, not just like, okay, what happened? Like, connecting dots. That's kind of like, it's either, back to your point, Tim, it's either cliff notes or connecting dots. And that's kind of where I'm like, yep, you saw this layoff, you saw this layoff, you saw this layoff. Layoffs are coming, and they're all separate little news items. But if you look at them the past week, 7 to 10 days, you're like, oh, this seems like it's getting momentum now. And that's where that's how that does help me maybe, solidify a trend or where maybe other things are disparate that way in the news.
I feel like I want to combine the two of you and put your newsletters together.
That's what the podcast is.
And this will be called
Wake Up. What do you think we're doing, Tim? I mean, come on.
Come on.
But then I can call it Wake Up to the Founders Brew, and I can just put the two together.
Right.
Right? Come on. We can make
Okay, sure.
So you two work together, or you've known each other from the past, from executive days, I guess.
Yes.
You're both worked in similar sides of the business. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
How's the Anchor treating you?
Great. It's a great audience. It's again, my audience is a bit of a mix of consumer and executive. This is definitely a little more executive, which is where my mind was going to anyway.
Yeah, nice.
But no, Janice and Richard have been overly generous, and it hasn't, I'm not doing anything different. It's really just doing it under the, and it's not like
Under the umbrella,
a big change. I just literally moved it, under their subscription plan. So it's been, so far.
Yeah, I love the service they provide. I think what Richard's been doing, I think the Anchor kind of just, there is a truth that needs to be told. And we've had Richard on, and you just know, he's basically saying, I kind of got tired of the BS of LA
trades.
Times coverage of what's happening. And I need to tell what's exactly happening and ask questions like, who is this person? Why are they here? What's going on? Why isn't this person fired? Why aren't you making any real decisions over in the studio? So I kind of love that he kind of knows the inside scoop enough, and they're not pushing him out. They're almost embracing his kind of critical thinking and appreciation for the art enough that he's willing to call it out as needed.
Yes. And I think, it's been interesting. We're different voices, but we are two sides of a coin. Where I'm also take it kind of like, this is BS. We all know it's BS. I'll say it's, but it's news anyway. I'll put a little more of a lighter spin on it. I'm a little more of not comedic, but just like a lighter tone. Yeah. Richard would be a little more of the, not curmudgeon, but a little more of the, as you said, the guy who's going to really call this out or chastise or whatever it might be, but it's the same ideology of calling out BS when you see BS in town, and not being like, oh yeah, well, we'll talk about the Emmys, but it's an artistic award. It's random. Why are we all acting like this is the biggest? It happens every year. It's like all this stuff. We know why it exists. It plays a role in the business 110%. But let's call this out for what it is, and then we can have the conversation.
Right.
But if we
then we know what the award really means, then we can talk about the winners and losers.
Take what you want out of it, and winner and loser. There's no loser. It's like oh, I didn't win an artistic award. Okay.
Although I love Ted Lasso, so I was happy with the last results of the last Emmys.
All right, well, we can get.
Well, you might be happy with this year's too.
Yeah, I have a lot to say on that
one. It's interesting because I said this to Richard when he first came on, that I felt like he was Nikki Fink when Nikki Fink first started.
Yeah,
because she was very much he's calling out all the BS between the trades, which are all now owned by one companies, and they all have their own interest in promoting whatever the studio wants, because the studios basically keep them afloat. And she eventually went down a dark path, which Richard obviously does not go down, thankfully. But I think it's a refreshing. He brings a refreshing viewpoint to it that I think was missed in a lot of regards.
So wait, explain to Janice who Nikki Fink is, because I don't know if Janice knows who Nikki Fink is.
Oh, Nikki Fink she started Deadline Hollywood, which is a website now owned by Penske Media, which at the time she was the only person who wrote on it, and she was just a little. She had the inside scoop to a lot of what was happening behind the scenes. She befriended a lot of the studio heads, and she got a lot of information fed to her. And it was great access because she kind of also didn't hold back. If she saw BS, she'd call BS. And, everyone, when you read the trades, you can tell when they're just totally toeing the line or trying to twist, say the right thing not to offend their studio paymasters. She just didn't care. And then it just started it got really dark. And then, when Penske came in and bought her, things went a little south, and she eventually went away, and there was no one really filling in. And then Deadline just became a rehash of Variety. And Richard came in and started sort of filling that void by saying, okay, these guys are all in cahoots. I'm going to start telling what's really happening. And, then people started feeding in information. And, he's been around. I think he's worked in various aspects of the industry, so he knows the ins and outs, and he knows people. And it's, as we've talked about repeatedly on this podcast, it's a relationship business. So if you have the relationships, you can get the information. And I think that's where he's definitely become an asset. So, but it's interesting you guys bring up the Emmys, if we can pivot to that. And what you just said, Sean, about everyone freaking out about who got left out. Like there was all these articles about Yellowstone not getting nominated, and This Is Us getting shut out. And it's like, I don't really think consumers care per se. I mean, I know the actors care.
Sure.
Obviously. But, I was thinking about this the other day, and honestly, I didn't think Yellowstone was that spectacular this past season. And honestly, Succession was. So I didn't really see it as a complete snub. But again, I think the press always seems to want to push this narrative that somebody's always left out. And I think it's also in the service of the Academy to make it seem like the award means more beyond just those who are nominated, if you take it that way.
Sure. There's 400 plus television shows out there. No one's watching them all. This isn't a fair value. So I don't even know. It's the dumbest thing in the world to be like, it's from a world of when there was 3 broadcast networks and you could probably watch most shows every year.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed in how they approach this, but except for the volume. And as an artistic award, no one's evaluating all the participants, all the contestants. So is that a fair system? No, of course not. How could you say that? I mean, objectively speaking, it's like having a beer competition, and it's my other passion lives like craft beer, and you only taste 20% of the beers. Like, oh, okay, well, so the other 80%, I don't know them, so they're probably can't.
Yeah, they're just not that good.
So
did you are you an Academy member, Sean?
No, I'm not.
Oh,
not.
Keith, did you try to watch the screener? I mean, it's impossible.
No,
it is
physically impossible.
Full-time job.
Faulting anyone. I'm just saying
it's
impossible.
It's absolutely impossible.
The list that they give you to start with, just if I had to just watch one thing from each category, it would take me forever. And then you open it up and there's 19 things, and then I'm in some category where I have to watch news broadcasts in order to do it right. I have to watch like new broadcast episode things. So it is crazy. It's crazy. You're totally right.
So it is what it is. It's a general barometer of something, but it's also to Keith's point. Oh, Keith like that show. I like this show. Is any of our opinions greater than the other one? No. Does it matter?
Right.
No. Like it's not basketball. This isn't an NBA game where you have this point and this point. There's a proven winner in this. It's equated to things that it doesn't equate to any artistic, the Oscars, whatever, any artistic award outside of we're going to recognize you for your achievement or something like, okay, great. And that's to be lauded, but to compete head to head on this stuff. Okay. What it's an opinion. It's 100% opinion based award that what tell you is like, what won 4 years ago? I don't know. Like, all right, yeah. Okay, great. Like what is it even? It's just something to maybe get you a pay bump. Maybe there's something along, and to your point about within the community, it means something. But to keep to your point to the consumer, like, you tell me, did Mad Men win? How many Emmys did they win? I don't know. Like, was it a great show? Oh my God. Yeah. That's what matters.
Yeah.
It's not like, this
the
whole
pop
thing
culture moment is almost done with it too, huh? Like to me, like looking at the nominations of the first thing that stood out to me is Squid Game, where I feel like Squid Game was 9 years ago, and then they're going to award it in September. Even I was like, wasn't that a 2000? Wasn't that early 2001? And we're
Lotus
giving them awards
was last summer. I mean, a
Yeah,
lot of
White
these
Lotus
shows were
was last
last
summer.
year. And quite frankly, your Ted Lasso was last summer. So like a lot of these front runners, even Succession was October. And that's the whole thing with this TV year, is that everybody backloaded to February to May, which was a big thing of like, they're just dumping shows, and very few of those shows are the ones that got the most nominations this year. So what does that tell you about anything? Like another case in point. Strategy will get you everywhere in this business.
Yes.
Just make a good show and make a good show and have it on your. I love Winning Time. Great. Didn't get one nomination. I still love Winning Time. I think Jason Clarke.
Those statues are pretty cool. I wouldn't mind one of those statues sitting right about here.
They're huge.
I'll tell you what, huge. I do have one, and I literally, it's the box I record my podcast on. That's where my.
It's inside the box you're recording.
Literally on top of underneath my laptop right now. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh, there you go. See,
there you go. That's a great.
So you're basically saying your career is built on your Emmy. It's literally built on your Emmy.
Exactly. Looking at it right now. Nice gold sturdy box here. It comes in. I highly recommend it.
Oh, that's hilarious. Okay, I'll borrow yours some point. That way you can put it right here on my bookshelf.
Whatever you need. Whatever you need.
Well, I mean, we often trash the award shows as soon as we can, because they are kind of a throwback to weird culture that doesn't exist anymore. You're right. Like there was kind of an exclusive nature to what entertainment was. It wasn't accessible. Like the evolution has come so far in the last 10 years, 20 years for sure, of just how much content is being created, my access to it, who's creating it, who's watching it, the amount of time being spent watching this stuff. It's like, it's not weighted like it used to be. Therefore, the award or the moment seems to also just fade away too.
Yeah, and the award ceremony itself is just like, you don't watch 3 networks anymore. You have YouTube to watch the speech highlights. It's, what are you watching? If you're talking about the show, for sure. But it's the diversity. It's a long tail of media. This story's been written for 20 years. It's not new, as you said. It's just getting longer and longer. I think now. And this is where the recession, or the theoretical recession, should it arrive, will be we haven't had one in 14 years or 13 years. That's a long time to go. And you want to go back to 2008, there was no streaming, so streaming has not seen a recession. So keep that, remember that. So and who knows how long this one will or not be, and so forth, but. This era of John Landgraf would go up every year at TCA, the head of FX networks, and he was always the official kind of show counter and be like, it's 552 this year, whatever, and that number kept going up. And now you can't help but think it probably will start going down, and for a variety of reasons. Look, I don't think anybody, the 3 of us, would argue that there's not enough television being made. Like we would probably say, we're good. We don't need it. But if you can't find a show you like, you should just stop watching television. It's like, it's not, it's not like, this group isn't represented, or these people don't have something. It's, or whatever, or this story is not being told. Granted, there are a lot more of certain people being given more attention than other people, but it's not like you can't find a show that speaks to a interest or a demographic or whatever it might be in this day and age. And now it's just a point of it's overkill. Netflix did, I think, 70 movies this year, whatever it was. You don't need 70 movies, it's all right. You could probably do 35 of them and make them, a little maybe
halfway decent
quality, and give them a little more marketing love.
I knew I loved this guy, Keith. I knew I loved this guy.
I mean, case in point, I don't mean to, bring up specifically, but The Gray Man, $200 million movie, Ryan Gosling, Chris Evans. Have you seen it plastered everywhere? Have you seen it like Thor? In terms of a marketing campaign, there's not as many theaters in its defense, and it's only limited this weekend, and it goes on Netflix next Friday, the 22nd.
Right.
But
Yeah.
Does it feel like an event?
Not at all.
And right. And that's what I mean. Like, all right, so there is that cultural, and that's why the movies are dead. I'm like, no, movies are not, because you know what? They matter. And that's how movie stars get made. It's not just through the movie itself, it's through the cultural moment, which is made through that $60-70 million marketing spend. And Netflix films don't get those. And that's why I was like, maybe Netflix should lean into theatrical. They're spending all this money on these movies and getting these, these guys are getting big paydays. It's great that the streaming number, the minutes viewed are great. Like, all right, all right, great. Which is the dumbest metric in the world. That's a whole separate comment. I won't get down to that. My rant on that.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Go down that one on too many other podcasts. People know where I stand on that one at this point. But from a cultural, relevancy moment, it's like what. That's why the question always comes up. Like outside of maybe Extraction, like what is the big Netflix movie? Like even Red Notice, I think like, oh yeah, like, but I don't know that everybody's like, oh my God, like it's not, back to like a Bill Simmons thing, a rewatchable, like, it doesn't, it's like,
right.
That's where that stuff, that cachet comes in. And that's a little bit what's lacking in the, that marketing play for Netflix. So
do we say it's lacking because we came from a time where that's the way it worked?
And it still does. I mean, as I said, Top Gun was everywhere. Like it's just so it's just
Top Gun was everywhere.
It's a traditional model
for like 4 years.
Yeah,
it was everywhere.
Exactly. Even pick Elvis, for example, which is a original. That Warner Brothers spent a lot of, but that was a very large presence, and that didn't have an unknown star. It had things going against it. It was out there. Minions. How much Minions did you see this summer? Like that was everywhere,
ridiculous.
So there is something to that where like, you'll remember that now, where if you don't have that cultural, cachet or presence, it's a little bit of a different, as much as successful as it might be as like, oh yeah, 100 million accounts watched it, et cetera, et cetera. And Netflix is also a global
at different
business,
times over a different time period. It doesn't happen like the water cooler.
What is that? How many minutes does it actually mean? Do they watch the whole thing, or they watch 5 minutes? I mean, it's the worst metric.
And that's what the cultural relevance. That's why I think like Squid Game had that cultural relevancy, and that's a great story because it wasn't because of marketing. It wasn't because of any of this. That showed everything against it. It was the quality of the show that worked, So like these things can kind of morph, but with movies, like series are one thing. Movies need that love of marketing, I feel like, to really make that, the thing, because a show you're not going to watch. I mean, some people might watch all at once, but a film you sit down and watch for 2 hours, you pay to go see it, you give it your attention. There's not a respect per se, but like I am dedicating my time to this. A series like, I'll watch one tonight, I'll watch one, whatever, and it's a different relationship with it. So that's where Netflix films has a challenge.
Yeah, I feel like if all you're doing is trying to fill up minutes, then they're always going to have that challenge because they have to somehow get past we need to create billions of minutes every single month in order to keep up with the demand. The consumer demand for minutes is greater than I feel like anybody can produce.
Yeah, and that's where I'm a contrarian on this, where a lot of streaming services and places will tell you engagement means success, and coming from my background, I've worked at HBO for many, many years. For me, it's subscribers. It's how many people are paying for your thing. And that's what matters. I don't care if you have the most, and that's why the stream minutes means nothing, because like, if somebody watched it for like, the big joke is some of these series that may have some adult scenes. Oh my God, their minutes viewed are this. But you know what? A lot of people are rewatching a certain section of each of these things many, many times. So I wouldn't count that as minutes viewed or popularity. It's a skewed metric.
But it's also a totally different business model to come to the theater. You're saying, come buy this product, buy a ticket to watch it. Yeah. And a subscriber base.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
Yeah. Subscriber base is to say, don't cancel me.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
like,
choosing to pay.
Just don't cancel.
Well, right. Yeah. But I mean, in terms of like that attention, metric is one, it has an outweighted metric to me where it's like, are you paying money for this or not? And that is sure, greater engagement probably leads you to people keeping the service and so forth. But if you're overwhelmed or things like that too, that's not good either. Like it's like, oh, okay, there's just too much to watch. I don't want to have this anymore. I can't be bothered with it. So the ultimate metric is someone paying you, and how much are they paying you? A Disney Plus subscription is $8. If it's Netflix subscription is almost $16. You're telling me these two things are in the same business? it's a different, and you know what? A Star Wars show costs you just as much as
Wait, they're not in the same business.
Well, I mean, the streaming service is not all built the same way, is what I'm saying.
Right,
So
I
it's
know. I'm
like,
just kidding. Yeah.
oh my God, they're competitors. I'm like, sorta. I mean, they both make cars, but one costs Mercedes-Benz costs and one costs what a Ford's going to cost you. So there's a nuance here that is not always addressed in these conversations about money and subscription versus minutes watched and all these other things that are kind of nebulous versus like, no, how much money making, how many people are paying you for your product. And that's what movies are still great at, because every Sunday those numbers come out and it's like, that's a hard number. That is not a rating. That is not a minutes watched. That is not that is literally how much money did people pay you for your movie this weekend, which is
I think that's what's interesting is I think that's what Netflix is running into now is their investors have gotten wise to the fact like, okay, this minutes watch thing, what does this mean? You're spending all this money, like $200 million for The Gray Man sounds great, but how are you making money? Like, where is the money? Like, you can't just say, oh, we have, we're losing subscribers and yet we're making $200 million movies that don't necessarily always feel like they're cultural moments.
Well, that's where the narrative. So go ahead. Yep.
Yeah. And I think that's what they're kind of starting to face now. And as we hit inflation and the may or may not be recession, I think there's going to be a lot of consumers going to be like, is this really worth it anymore? I mean, yeah, it's nice to have access to this movie, but the other thing, as Tim will praise me for saying this, the quality of their movies is just something that people are now starting to question even more. It's like, yeah, it's great to have Chris Evans and Ryan Gosling in a movie, but what if the movie's meh? And it's like a rehash of every other spy movie that we've seen over the last 20 years. Do I really want to, is it really worth paying $16 a month to have access to something like that when I can pay $8 a month and watch Obi-Wan Kenobi 15 times over?
Right. And that stream minutes thing doesn't tell you who finished it, which is also, which I would argue is a much more important metric. It's, I mean, back when they did report that kind of thing, there was that Wahlberg pick that came out with Peter Berg at the top of the pandemic, whatever. It was like one of the most popular films ever. I forget. It tells you that I don't even remember the name of it anymore.
Yeah, I don't remember that. I know what you're talking about, but I don't remember.
But it was one of their, still probably is one of their top 10 or 15. But like at the time, it was like, yeah, like they watched, like a lot of people watched 10 minutes. The completion rate was pretty low, and I was like, yeah, because it's not, even I started it and stopped it. I'm like, this is not. I was like, the respect, guys, it's not a good movie. And I was like, nope. Does that make me a happy customer? No. Does that add to the minutes viewed count? Sure. Which one do you count as a business? And Keith, back to your point, like about spending these large sums of money and these big headlines or whatever, this at a time when the subscriber numbers are keep going up, it's like, I guess it's working. Hey, there's these big paychecks doesn't really say, hey, the numbers are going up. Now they're not. And it's like, you're still spending this for retention or for what, like it's once you plateau, these questions that you just make right there is exactly the ones that come up where you don't get, quizzed or pressed on that as much at a time when it's like, well, the numbers are going up, so why bother? Now it's like, oh, we have to really look at this and see if we're making the right choices. So that's whether the question also of like dropping all the episodes at once. And these other questions where in the past, it's like, seems to be working. Now it's like, is this really the best strategy? And, so these things are coming up.
Play this thing out a little bit, right? Because we're going to possibly hit a recession. There's obviously some changes necessary, as we're saying. There's this weird inverted curve of like how much content you can make and how much the consumer wants to consume. I always found it weird that it takes 9 months or 12 months to make a piece of content and someone watches it in 60 minutes and then they want another 60 minutes. And you're like, I just gave you 1 year worth of work.
Beast.
Yeah, but I'm done. Yes. I want to burn more of that stuff. So there's this weird curve to it. Play this thing out over the next couple of years. What's the trend going to be? What are we going to see? Who's going to kind of fight for, who's going to fight for what territory, and how are we going to kind of determine what the transition is going to be as we get through this weird economic and media time?
Sure. And I actually wrote about this recently in my newsletter, The Wake Up at the Anchor.
Oh, The Wake Up. Really?
Yes, exactly.
The Wake Up. Nice.
It's a small plug. The main issue is that everybody's losing a lot of money on this. And it's fine to lose money when A, interest rates are low, money's cheap, and B, when the recession, when your economy is growing or in positive areas. Once you hit a recession and you can't really, your interest rate just went up for, 3x, whatever it might be, who knows, to get money to fund all these productions. Peacock and Paramount Plus lost $450 million in the first 3 months of the year. Disney Plus or Disney streaming lost $900 million in 3 months. End of the year, that's in the first quarter. That's not the year. So multiply that by four, you're talking $2 billion on a service that costs $8 a month. That like, what's, and if 30 of your subscribers pay literally under $1 for it in India, and it's like, oh, right, there's a lot under this that no one's get. Oh my God, look at the numbers of subscribers. Wait, where are they? And that's where these things start coming in. So to your point, what's going to happen, and where does this go? All that's going to be scrutinized a lot more as to like how much you're spending. And as we all know, you do have to spend to be in it, or you're just don't play, because you can't be this half-assed, streaming service like has a new show every month. And it's like, okay, which kind of is, I mean, Disney's playing that game a little bit. It was like, oh, it's a Star Wars series every month. It's every month we do one big thing, and the rest, it's not in the same cadence of a Netflix, which is across the board. But even HBO Max or even Paramount Plus does more original programming. So anyway, to your questions, like these losses are going to be looked at a lot more closely, and they're going to hurt the bottom, because the broadcast television business ain't going to save you anymore. It's not like, oh, we can pull this lever. The other levers to pull, these conglomerates are not large, and the Apple checkbook is still wide open, and the Amazon checkbook is relatively still wide open. So that's
so
probably
does the format change then? Like, do we go into live television or consumer created content, something like that, so that they can create still viewing hours without having to
that's called TikTok, build up entire production.
That's TikTok.
That's the other competitive factors. The TikTok,
but daytime television is formatted that way because they basically need to shoot it live and get it right onto the screen as soon as they do it. Otherwise, they couldn't make 24 hours with, well, Netflix is trying, but 24 hours of the movies for every channel everywhere. So there is a format. That format allows for get 5 people, get Kelly and Ryan to sit on stage. We have 2 hours worth of content, distraction for people.
And that's essentially what AVOD, which is advertiser supported video on demand. So things like Pluto, Peacock, which has a big AVOD play to it, Tubi. These 24-hour channels that are free, that are just exactly what you said. It's, there's a Today Show channel on Peacock. You can watch a Today Show any time of day you want on Peacock. You can watch
Why
SNL.
Would you want to watch the Today Show?
I'm just to your Kelly and Ryan analogy. I'm just saying you can do that, and that is being done. They literally just announced, last week, Jeopardy 24 hours a day, Wheel of Fortune 20 on a channel on Pluto, which is free to watch. So like, yeah, then there's money there. Sure. Is it valuable? I mean, not an inherently valuable audience, but can you make a business? Sure. It's fine. There's just different shades of business here. And it's like, oh,
well, that's like old lady television where the lady turns on the TV.
Every audience
and just
is
plays
valid.
Forever. Yeah.
What to say is what I want is that's fine, but you're not the only person in the room here. So, you gotta so there's going to be
pays for itself. It pays for itself. What are you going to do? Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So to your point, where does this go? There's just different tiers of business models as there was before. HBO was $15 a month if you wanted it. You had basic cable and you had free over the air. And it's like, now it's like, well, the streaming equivalency, you have AVOD, you have some subscription services, which are $5 for Apple, $7 or $8 for Disney, and upper tier is $15 for HBO Max and Netflix. Or if you want the ads, that's the next adjustment. Okay, here's $8 or $9, and Netflix will see what they're going to price their ad supported at. Even Disney's going to have ad supported by the end of the year. So so where's this going, to your point? Also, that's the next where it's going is like, okay, Netflix has got, everybody's going to pay them $15 a month for Netflix in the US. There's nobody else is going to do that. They've hit this.
Makes you wonder if Prime and Apple got it right, where it's just like on demand pay-per-view. Basically, it's like when we make it, I think we have enough people to pay us back, and then we'll make some more, and you pay us back.
Apple is more like what Sean referenced, where it's like maybe a show a month, if that. Like, I mean, Apple's been very slow in terms of how they've sort of released a lot of their shows, and Amazon, I think, they have their big swing for the fences, like the Lord of the Rings show, which obviously they're betting the farm on. But I as far as pricing, I mean, Amazon's a little bit of a different beast, because we've had Cameron on, who's head over there, and that's not their main goal. Their main goal is to just keep people on Prime. Like, you want to watch? Okay, great, watch. Or you want to go buy a pair of socks? Go buy. Oh wait, you want to listen to music? There's music. It's just, they just want to keep you on the platform. I don't think.
But they also have a pay-per-view model. Like, you can watch. I rented Spider-Man last night for my kids.
Oh, it's
on-
Peapod. Yeah, you can do.
Yeah, that's
sure.
P,
Yeah.
but you can do
video
that.
on demand, whatever. Yeah,
And
this
Apple
is
does
all
that too, where it almost like we'll just make it's the theatrical idea. We'll make something really great, and then enough people will come and consume it, and we'll make profit from it. Then instead of subscriber base, which I feel is insatiable, like you can never keep up with the demand of.
Yeah, and I mean, Apple's a really interesting example. And back to your point about spending and lost spending and how much you have to spend to play in the game. Apple tried to dabble in this for about 3 or 4 years and was like, we got to just play or not play. We can't be doing this one show, oh, we have and if like the amount of deals they've done over the past year, Apple TV next year, you won't even recognize next year. The volume of content that they're going to have next year, you'll be like, what, okay. Like they put the checkbook in because they did 4 years of this kind of like, it's free, it comes with phones. It's still only $5 a month, which is like, what is your business? What is the business model here? I have no idea.
They're worth $1 trillion. They don't need a business model.
They have, DiCaprio, De Niro, Scorsese movie coming next year. It's like, that's not cheap. So like, they just have this, Apple clears, I don't know, 20 billion in profit a quarter. It's like the money that, over $200 billion in cash on hand. So they can outspend anybody, which is kind of what they're doing now. What their end game is, I really don't know. I mean, it's just Apple affinity. It's clearly not that's making it's losing money by leaps and bounds. There's no way, you can even justify that. You can watch it anywhere. You don't have to watch it on your iPhone. You can watch it on your Android. You can, it's become that Apple TV Plus app has now become agnostic, where before it was more of a, you got to be in the Apple ecosystem. Now it's like, it's everywhere, So what is the business model there? I don't really know, but they're spending all this money now. And your other question about formats, sports is becoming a much larger part of the equation now, which it wasn't even last year. So that's really your next frontier. Is the NBA which is going to be the deals probably going to be decided early next year. That's going to be the next, not canary in the coal mine per se, but they've done soccer deals this year, the UK soccer, the Premier League, Champions League, which are not nothing, but they're a few, Champions League or Premier League games get maybe a million viewers for the finale. It's not, it's not like a huge thing. It's not 27.
So it sounds like you play it out. There's like a battleground over the streaming services and the cable television, because eventually the formats are going to be very closely related,
right,
and we're going to really
who owns the cable,
who owns
business,
which
traditional media companies. So who's going to suffer if the bundle starts breaking?
Does Comcast buy Netflix, or does Netflix buy Sony? Does Sony buy?
But it's Apple who's bidding, and Apple doesn't need anybody and can do whatever they want. So if they pay, the NFL Sunday Ticket is the next big thing that's probably going to happen in the next few weeks. Apple's rumored to be number. Not that that's a huge. I mean, it's another loss leader. I mean, DirecTV lost billions of dollars of that over.
Maybe we see it a little bit with Discovery, the Discovery merger. Just like so much, big gigantic corporations just eating each other, because the battle is basically starting to find itself in some very few. Like, there's only a finite amount of viewers, and we need to get their eyes in 4 or 5 major fields.
Yeah.
So which platforms
it's always been the way, everybody acts like the media business was this rock hard, like it's stable, like, oh my God, it's salt of the earth business. It's all, Blockbuster and Viacom, go to that, like you go back, like, there's always General Electric owned NBC, like it went to Comcast, like Panasonic owned Universal for a while. Coke owned Sony, like, it's just maybe it's speeded up a little bit more, and tech has become a new player, which it wasn't for many forever, so there's that change in it. But this belief that like, oh, so much change, I'm like, yeah, because it's always pretty stable. I'm like, no, it's never, it's never that way. It's just now the economy is becoming a much bigger role in it, of like, where that wasn't a thing before. We haven't had that as a factor here in 14 years, where now it's like, oh, and your point, how many services are you gonna pay for?
Right.
Percent,
I'm already tired of all of them, actually.
It's a little. I'm tired. I'm talking myself into being tiring. So it's always
recently I was like doing something, and it required Star subscription. I was like, oh god damn. So I click on it, and then I realized like, oh wait, I have a Star subscription. I'm like, I do have a, like, this is getting ridiculous.
That kid's free with something, right?
Where's my kids? Exactly. I had to text Connor. Did you get me? No, I'm just like, like it is way from a consumer point of view, it's very tiring. And then don't forget, from a consumer view, you also have to compete with video games and
Oh, sure. I mean, it's a larger, sure.
yeah,
attention, time
reading.
span
I
kind
don't
of
know.
Stuff.
I don't think anybody reads
books,
anymore, but I was just
books are
kidding.
still out there. Yeah, exactly.
So great.
It's a different. And then if good luck trying to find your favorite baseball team. MLB has 5 different deals with for baseball games. So it's just like, who's as a consumer winning in that? No, that's where it's again, it skews. It's gonna like, yep, oh yeah, we have 5 deals for MLB. Great. I want to watch the Mets. Where are they? Let me check 1. No, not there. No, 2. No, not in that one. Oh wait, do I have that one? Oh wait, I don't have that one. Oh, it's on Apple TV. Yeah. No, like you're gonna piss off your customers eventually, and that's always the worst thing you want to do, through price or whether that's through confusion. And that is, where a lot of these trends are going. And that's so it goes one way, it goes too far, it's going to skew back a little
especially
bit.
in a recession. We become more
far.
critical about where we want to play and how to play.
Yep,
the timing
exactly
couldn't be better or worse, depending upon your point of view.
Yeah.
Well, Sean, it is awesome to meet you and to be part of this conversation with you, because I have a feeling we're going to talk a lot over the next couple of years as this recession happens. It's great to have someone to compete with Keith when it comes to understanding of what the heck is happening in Hollywood.
I hope. Did I explain everything all right? Did I?
Oh yeah, spot on.
Okay, because I don't.
I think Janice has listened to the right person. She totally knows where to get her news from.
And don't remember, earnings season starts next week, so all this information, all the real information, not this. It'll be profit, it'll be loss, it'll be subscriber number. This will all start rolling out over the next 2 to 3 weeks. So this topic is going to be front and center of all media attention until we all hopefully go on vacation for the latter part of August. Where I have to get up at by 7 a.m. and look at earnings sheets when I first wake up and get a report out by 8:30 a.m. for the
keep up with it.
Those are fun days. Yeah. But I appreciate it's been great. I really enjoyed it.
Give our love to the guys at the Ankler, Richard and the team over there, and give our love to Janice. We really appreciate her listening. She might be one of our favorite subscribers right now. So
sure, she's very happy to hear that.
It's the only episode she's going to watch of this show. It's the one that you're on. So we gotta talk her up. Maybe Janice, please subscribe. Please feel free. Hit the button right there on the right hand corner.
There you go.
Yeah, great to meet you.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Appreciate you coming on.
Yep.
All right, that's it. That's how we do the show. And then Lydia cuts it for us there.
All right. Hopefully that's didn't go off in too many tangents, but
no, you're good.
I try to keep
kidding.
Dialed in. We didn't even talk crawdads, which I was like, I have my
I know we didn't even talk about this weekend. See, I told you we might get to it.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm like, I got plenty of I'm curious. I did $3 million yesterday. I'm like, all right, so
we'll see. That's Gabler's baby, so she's always she's got pretty good taste. So we'll see how it holds up over the weekend. But
it's just that book audience of like 2-quadrant movie at best, and I'm like, all right, it's a big book, but it isn't Gone Girl.
I've seen a lot of people reading that book in coffee shops.
I know.
They're like, the movie must be coming out because everyone's reading the book now.
Has to be a thing, right? And you're like, how? That's why I love the box office. Like, it'll tell you exactly. It's not like, this. It's like, no, like this is what it made. Like this was the size of this book audience translated to this movie audience, to this much movie audience, and that's But I couldn't, if you told me it was 10, I'd be like, If you told me it was 30, I'd be like, okay, I believe you both. Like I wouldn't be like, no way, like I could see it going either way. Yeah. That's the first movie this summer that really, outside of maybe Elvis was a little bit of that too. But
my family loved Elvis. I haven't seen that yet, but they love
I haven't either. But yeah, no, I mean it's playing very well. I mean, it's like it's holding, it's definitely word of mouth's been great. But we didn't even get to the movie business falling off a cliff. So that's the next headline.
Yeah, no, we'll have to have you back for that one.
Yeah, have you back.
We got into television and we just stayed right there.
Never. We started talking movies and then I went into the industry as a whole, and then we just never came back to it. So
it is funny writing this and now being in front of a more of an industry audience and writers and journalists. And I said, I wrote a few things, and then a few days later, I see the exact same pieces being written in Variety in the ownership. I'm like, oh, the box office is like, oh, that's interesting. I'm like, I like the way I wrote it better. So I'm like, all right, good. So you guys like they just write. I'm like, there's not a lot to. It's important, but it's this much. It ain't this much. I'm like,
right.
Well, they have this much. They have to fill in the blank this big. Okay, there he is. There's like
It's
Dude,
an
we
outdated
need that. We
format.
didn't need it, but we needed to make the page look better.
We need to
whatever.
fill
Yeah.
the space. Exactly.
Yeah, make it feel like it's important to them. Like you said this, you did. It's good. They kind of like learn a little bit of that and see how that translates. But
That's so cool.
So, and you guys doing both podcasts. Has this been? I assume you both enjoyed, obviously, but this has been a good endeavor for you guys.
Yeah, this is episode. We're getting close to episode
We're
100,
almost
right?
100.
We're at 95 or 96, something like that right now.
I think it might be 95. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been doing it for just about 2 years.
Right. Okay.
And it started as reaction to
94. Okay. Thank you, Lydia.
Yeah. But we're close. I mean, we're 6 away. So it started reaction to just like so much happening in such an amount of time. And it was the Paramount. What's that called, Keith? The Paramount.
The Paramount Decree. When the Paramount Decree was dropped, it was such a big moment and no one talked about it. Do you know what the Paramount?
The theater ownership thing.
Yeah. That we thought like this is, and Olivia de Havilland, who was the one that filed the lawsuit, died like the week later or something like that, or died the week before or something. There was like in tandem. It was like this weird thing, and we're like, wait, the world's about ready to change. Let's stay on top and see what's happening. Just watch this evolution take place, and just we're geeks. It gives us a platform, lets us meet people like you, but we kind of want to know what's going on in the industry. And Keith and I would just get on the phone and talk for 2 hours anyway. I'm like, we should just record ourselves. This is stupid.
Well, the podcasting.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then you bring your friends on. I can actually meet some smart people. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and actually, there's a thing that's not being covered yet, or not being talked about, but so Regal Cinemas is the number 2 theater chain in the U.S. It's owned by a company called Cineworld, which is a conglomerate, but I mean, their stock's always been shit, but it's now at 20 cents. And it's been dropping like 7-8% for like the past week. And I'm like, and this isn't a good time for the movie business. I'm like, a month from now, is Regal Cinemas gonna exist as a going concern? Like everybody's like AMC, all that was the meme stock.
Yep.
And I'm like, Regal's, and it's number 2 in a large. It's not like it's like, oh, it's a real distant. It's like it's a solid theater count in the US. And I'm like, this could go south really fast, really soon. And I've heard no one, or maybe I don't understand. Like, I go 20 cents is bad. Like, I see where it's going. Maybe it's like, but there's a lot of, I don't know if I'm missing something from a stock point of view of like how the market works. But I mean, it's always been under $1. Like, it's never been a great stock. But like now, like this is like.
Surprised they haven't suspended trading yet. So maybe
that's just it too. But it's been under $1 for so long that it's gotten up.
Maybe
that's what I don't. It's a good point, because maybe there are things that I'm not aware of about. But it has because I have the same theory of like once it falls under $1, I know it's in a danger zone of being delisted or whatever it might be.
Right.
But it hasn't had that, so maybe there's something I'm kind of not understanding about it. But from a like on paper point of view, I'm just like,
well, it's a
when
bad
it hits
look.
a penny, I'm gonna buy like $1,000 worth.
You can buy it now. It's 20 cents. Like,
but I would buy it at a penny. I could buy a million shares for 10,000 pounds, whatever.
Quarter the market with your popcorn server.
I can tell you for like $5,000, I can buy like half of the shares out there, or whatever.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
control the board and tell them to clean up the mess.
Yeah, but that's about your point about like trends and stuff, Tim. About like what's coming up. Like it's not being talked about anymore. Movie theaters and all this stuff like kind of went away. It was for a long time. Movie theaters are done. Now it's come back, and I was like, yeah, I guess so. But I'm like, they're in for a rough go the next 2 months. That is going to get bad. Like, the Bullet Train, I hope, is a good movie. The trailers are good. But that's the last hope for till the middle of October.
Yeah, we don't really talk about it.
Literally nothing on it
on our own podcast, but we were talking about like how a Marvel movie pre-pandemic was $1 billion, and now we're like, hey, it made 160. Like, that's a really good show, and we forget like the theaters also lost 80% of that revenue. They're probably ones really losing because everyone else gets the long tail on their OTT platform, but the theaters don't get that long tail part of it. So there really is a crash happening for them, and we find the little wins. But I'll say like my theater going experience in the last year and a half since I've been kind of going back to theaters, it's like it's not improving. The theater seats are breaking more. It's getting less and less and less for the same $50 to go to the theater or whatever. So
Yeah, and
Yep.
then but you went, and it's like, all right, has the theater ever been
Oh, I'll always go.
an amazing
But
experience?
I'm
like,
a weirdo that way. Yeah.
right, and it's like that's people just like going to the, people are like, families are back. My family's never left. People need to get out of the house with their kids. Like everybody who writes these things about families are like, do you have the 5-year-old? Like I don't, but I'm like, but
Yeah.
as my best example is like Tom and Jerry, which was not a good, very well reviewed movie, came out in February of 2021. It opened at $26 million in the heart of a pandemic. I'm like, but that doesn't tell you people need to get the heck out of the house with their kids. And they have been, they still are. But like, oh, they're back. I'm like, they never left, man. Like that was the one genre that people you saw the money at. Wasn't great, but like that was still performing. Like, so this like, we're not going back to the movies. I'm like, we're going out of the house. We're getting out of
anything we can do to get out of the house.
Yeah, we're doing something. And it's not as expensive as going to, whatever. It's like, it's still an affordable form of entertainment for a lot of people. People writing about the movie business are very well-off people, and they don't understand the role that movies and entertainment play, where it's something to do. It's not TV, and you're out of your environment, and you're not, all the other things. So,
which is probably why we always think of it as recession-proof. Like there's always something.
Yeah,
right. You want
There's always some people that need to get out of the house,
but you need 5 streaming services.
We think of it's like, well, movies are expensive in compared to television.
Right.
You're like, no, movies are cheap compared to a vacation.
Right. Or a sports game, or what? Right. Basically, like, sure. Exactly right. Or paying to go to
even just out to eat. I think it's cheaper to go to the movie than going out to a restaurant.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it's and everybody's happy, and it's like, okay, so that's still different topics, but anyway, that's like, I think that's gonna be what's coming up. Like, you're gonna have your streaming numbers immediately, or the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then B, you're gonna have a movie downfall. Those pieces will probably start dropping middle of August, late August into September, and keep going that way. And you're going to have the streaming resurgence story coming out with Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and House of Dragon, and dropping within a 10-day period. We're like, streaming's back, and it's like, okay, thanks, so like, no, but I mean, like, that's where I see the things going, where maybe you're not on your radar right now.
Why don't you just start writing your articles now?
I mean, you might as well just put them out.
I just put them in the trades for you, right? I literally just wrote them out, ahead of the time. So that's kind of, and that's kind of the context I offer in the newsletter, a little bit of that, whatever I can, like, hey, by the way, this is coming up, to try and give this professional edge or whatever. Just like, hey, this is going to start thinking about this now before you're in the middle of it. If you are thinking about this kind of stuff. But those are the 3 kind of things. But I'm curious, what do you think of Lord of the Rings?
What do you think of it, Keith?
Are you guys big OTR people, or?
Well, I worked on it briefly when I was at New Line.
Okay. So I covered all of them for HBO.
So. Yeah, I'm sure you did.
I fell asleep in every one.
I don't know. I mean, like, I watched the trailer for
that's the proper reaction right there.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I mean, I'm not excited about it. I don't know they called the Rings of Power, so I'm assuming it's a prequel kind of thing. Yeah. But I just don't know.
Is Connor still on?
I think so. I don't know.
He's there.
I just don't. I don't know. I'm not amped. I wish I was amped. I have one of my friends is diehard. I'm really curious what he thinks of it. He was kind of really into the teaser. He thought it was great. So I don't know. Maybe the diehards are into it, and it's just being in that world again is all they really need. But I think Amazon needs it to do a little bit more than that if it's going to be worth the investment.
There you go. Here's your audience right here for it.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
So
please.
I have 5 boys.
Okay.
I have 5 boys, and they love the movies. I swear they've seen it all the time. I love the movies too, because I get a really good nap between hour 2 and hour 4. Yeah.
Nice.
But Connor, so you were a fan of the Peter Jacksons.
I've read the Percy Jackson.
No, Peter Jackson, the director.
Yeah,
Peter Jackson.
Yeah,
Percy Jackson.
That's just the movies. I've read also like the books of Lost Tales 1 and 2 and the Silmarillion as well. And so I've actually read the content, and
there you go. I told you he's your audience.
I'm not thrilled.
Why not? You give me a take on this?
Just from what I've seen thus far, it's not necessarily sticking within that. I mean, once again, this is just based on the teaser trailers. It's not necessarily grounded and founded in the same ways that the Peter Jackson original trilogy was. They're kind of going the way of The Hobbit with it, which was just abominable.
Okay.
Like it was, I hated the Hobbit movies so much for so many different reasons. And it seems like they're once again just kind of rehashing that. Like it's not like the same. What made the Lord of the Rings trilogy so amazing was that it was all, I mean, analog in a way, right? Like minimal CG at best. Like orcs were real people in real costumes with real weapons. They built Rohan in like 2 weeks and then tore it down in 2 weeks, and like it's just not. They're just half-assing it with like CG. And
so
like,
the trailers are really not winning you over at all. They're
No.
like, this looks cheap. This
No.
looks not like whatever. I don't know where
It looks
you know.
video gaming.
When Connor talks, it's probably my experience with Star Wars. Like it's so hard to explain what the original Star Wars look and feel was, because now you look at them as so weird and cheesy and Jim Henson-y. But you're like, no, that's the way Star Wars was made. And then the latest versions, I'm like, gosh, it just looks, everything's so digitally. And
So do you like the new series, Tim, or have you been watching? Are you a big Star Wars person?
I'm talking about the
look of it. Okay, got it.
Recreate the last
sure.
3 episodes
right.
or whatever. I'm like, it's just, we're now
Sure.
into, and I mean, maybe Lucas would have made it this way if he didn't make the
Well, I mean,
originals.
it is what it is. It's
Yeah.
yeah. And what about Game of Thrones? Are you guys Game of Thrones people?
That's not me. I'm not gaming.
I'm not either. So
No.
no. All right, Connor, are you in for House of Dragon or no?
I'm definitely going to give it at least a peek.
Okay, what do you think of what you've seen so far?
I haven't seen very much, so I don't have.
I mean, trailer wise, it's always like anything else. Okay,
I mean,
No.
I'm.
Go check it out. Your game.
I always feel like
Okay.
it's disappointing when you have to say goodbye. You're like, okay, we're saying goodbye to Game of Thrones forever. Everybody, let's say goodbye. A big
Nothing's
we're so
forever.
sad. And
Nothing's
you're like,
forever.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna make up a new one. You're like, it's
No, they're never going to say goodbye
it's like
completely.
a
especially if
stepmom.
There's money to be
You're
made.
like, we got rid of mom, and now can't we just have the original mom back? Why do we have the stepmom?
She's
I
still
don't know,
there.
Like how the original one ended was not great. Like I was not like as was
No.
season 8 was just terrible. Like it just I don't know.
The word on the street. I mean, people finished it out of duty, I think, but
Yeah. At that point, it was just like, I made it this far. I can't.
Yeah,
stop
you
now.
got to finish the book. You don't stop the last chapter. Yeah.
Right.
No, but
right,
that's.
right.
I mean, that's. And I don't watch any of this stuff. I'm just not my fan of all this Marvel. But and God bless those who do. It's fine. Have at it. Everybody's their own. But like, I'm just curious because there is this triumvirate in this 10-day period where I'm like, is there that much excitement for this stuff, or does it just sound like there is? And that's where, because it's the Andor series of Star Wars, whatever. I don't know the new.
Oh yeah. It's not.
That's
Endor,
the Star.
That's
It's
the
something
one
like
with,
that. I don't know.
That's supposed to be the prequel to Rogue One.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, it has
so.
a larger element than So I was like, oh, and I'm not. I've seen the marketing has been dropping, and I'm just like, I don't know. I know. I'm just curious if people just fatigued or
I
not
can't
excited.
keep track of it, man. And I grew up with it. I'm like, it'd be like,
no, it's a lot.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's
yeah.
Well, I think that it's. I think part of it is, you have a relatively well. I mean, he was a big character in Rogue One, but he was a created character for Rogue One, and then you're giving him even more backstory. Whereas you compare that with Obi-Wan Kenobi, where you have essentially 9 movies that have built on the mythology of this back and forth between Obi-Wan and Anakin, and you get to see more Vader. Because if you think about like what we saw when we grew up with Vader, it was like very much just the choke. That was it. And you got a little test of like what made him so fearful in Rogue One, but then Obi-Wan Kenobi, you get to see him like full, like stopping a ship, ripping the door off, fighting someone with just the Force, like things like that. We're like, oh, now I get why everybody was scared of this guy. But with the other one, it's just like it's a minor character who wasn't that great. The movie was basically saved in an editorial booth. It wasn't, the director was a disaster. So it's like, it's interesting to me that they picked that one character to sort of build a story on.
Mandalorian kind of had the same thing though, right?
Well, yeah,
minor
true.
Character. That's
right.
But it was first. But it was first. It was first mover, and now it's like.
Yeah, but I would argue that Boba Fett was a very popular character, despite the fact that he was minor.
Yeah,
he was very popular, and the fact that they made a show based on sort of someone who was basically Boba Fett in the Mandalorian, and you could see that kind of playing more to an appetite versus a minor character who really isn't that popular.
Yeah.
Do you guys know
That's sort of different.
The play? I'm gonna totally change this, but I promise this is
Play.
relevant. There's a play called Rosencrantz
What's
and
that?
Guildenstern Are Dead. You ever
Dead.
hear that?
Oh yeah.
Sure, I couldn't tell you what it's about, but yeah.
Well, it's
heard
a play off of one line in Hamlet where someone runs in and yells, "Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead," and apparently these are Hamlet's childhood friends, and it turns him over, or whatever. But then Tom Stoppard goes, "There's an entire play now about Rosencrantz and Guildenstern."
Love.
Yeah, it's almost like I feel like Star Wars figured out. It's like, let's find one line and then we make an entire universe this way. And then there's somebody scanning words on a script right now trying to figure out what's the next universe spin-off that's going to turn into something else or whatever.
Well, that's Marvel. It's everybody. It's, what else can we mine here? And make a thing. And one of these is hopefully hits. And when that one hits, then we can mine that one. But if the other 4 that are duds, we just kind of it's a hit to miss ratio. Yeah. I just feel like
there's a baby Yoda in it, then it'll work.
Well,
but I think
but that was the thing on Thor, and it's like everyone's like, "Oh, it was good," and they're like, "But take a break." Like, there's a thing for taking a break, and I feel like that is lacking from this landscape, where it's like there's something to be said for wanting to be missed, and that to me is lacking in this business right now because there's such an appetite, and for to your point, what's next? I have to consume. I think people are just like, "I'm full, go away."
No, but I was thinking about this, especially with Thor, right? Mm-hmm. Chris Hemsworth has been playing Thor for 14 years. I mean, eventually he's just good at, because he is actually human. He's not actually Thor, that he can't be that. So I feel like they have to max out him as a biological creature and figure out what the transition is.
Captain America's changing to Anthony Mack. These things will go, how long is that term, obviously, but just in terms of the volume, because now there's no Marvel movie until Black Panther 2 in November. Yeah. So all right, that's at least 5 months without a Marvel.
We get some break.
Yeah. But I'm like, I feel like that's where Star Wars, not to, I'm just geeking off it for a second, but there's no movies on the horizon for another 4 years or 3 years, at least, probably 4. And which is a bad thing for Disney, but it may be a good thing.
Right.
But these series kind of are mucking it up a little bit where it's like, it's really you're serving a harder and harder core fan as you go along here. Keith, to your point about this is a character that's tertiary to this, all right, everybody doesn't need to watch everybody who's seen every movie doesn't need to watch every TV show. And that's also where the Disney Plus model again of what's the growth, you're that's all that service is. Outside if you have kids stuff, that's that. But from anything, it's Marvel and Star Wars shows. That's it.
That's all it is.
So that
and National Geographic, Sean. There's National Geographic.
Are fantastic. That's
the first thing I watch when I think Disney Plus. I think I gotta watch some Nat Geo.
I bet you it's very popular. We're joking about it, but I bet you people love that. I mean, it doesn't get a lot of Discovery is a big business for a reason, and it's not necessarily.
I guess that's true. Right.
TLC, 90 Day Fiance, that's an important part of their business. But it's it's documentaries. People do love that stuff, but yes, but it's not driving the subscriptions per se. But that's the other part of the Disney thing. And I'm like, all right, this is getting a little tired. This wheel of Marvel, Star Wars, and I'm like, all right. What do you got for me new? And I don't think they have an answer of Dancing with the Stars, that's their answer in September. And I'm like, I don't know that I have a lot of confidence in this. But I don't have kids, and I don't. There's a whole factor. Anybody, they have a large audience to it, but creatively, I'm a little the malaise of just all these things. Even Game of Thrones wasn't that long ago. I don't know. I don't know. And that's why I'm asking you about excitement, because I don't know. I'm curious. Just are these things going to be the moments that they think they're going to be? Which I don't,
Yeah, I guess I'm. I won't be surprised when there's an evolution, but I have a feeling there's an evolution coming. For example, if the writer's strike does happen next year, we're going to be hitting. We have this gigantic content machines that are producing content like crazy, and then you go writers on strike. You're Netflix shuts down or whatever. There's just so many things that you need to keep the product going, and you go maybe it's a good thing. Maybe we'll evolve into another. Maybe we'll devolve reality TV, but maybe we'll evolve into something else through a major hit or major slowdown or something like that. And I think getting rid of kind of the garbage and asking what some of the priorities are will give us a new kind of core to work off of. It wouldn't be so bad.
There's also one more story that didn't get a lot back to stories that didn't get a lot of attention. There's a piece in the Reporter a couple of weeks ago just about like production costs with the supply chain, and just like how shows cost 30% more now because lumber costs more, and like like the sets cost. It was like things not only is that we're overproducing, what it's cost to produce them is going up as well. And that's where I get back to why I go back and make that joke about Disney costing $8 and Netflix costing $16. Shows aren't cheaper because you charge less for your service,
streamer,
so that's why Disney is losing $900 million and Netflix made $1.6 billion in the first quarter. And which business do you want? Which business are you telling me is more successful? I get where the stock is and I get what the perception is, but like at the end of the day, it's money business.
Money
you're paid
is
money.
Yeah.
You're not paid in stream minutes. So it's like this stuff needs to come back to the forefront. So I hope that's what I try and do in the conversation of it, at least of like what I choose to focus on and try and like look at this. Don't look at the number up here. Look at the number over here.
Yeah. Because eventually this
is going to catch up to you. This one will
Yeah.
catch up to you. This one is going to go wherever it wants to go. However you want to spin it. How many Emmy nominations I have is like, yeah, sure, whatever. That's great. I put a thing in my quote, my newsletter today. Casey Bloys is like, we got 10 less, we get 10 more. It's really not going to change my strategy. It's not why we do this. This is the head of HBO. This is the head of HBO telling you this. He's just like, I mean, granted, he had the most and did a good year, but like, doesn't really. That's your point with the Emmys. It doesn't really matter to the business. Like, this doesn't materially. Yeah. The time that's spent talking about it and the time that the effect it actually has on business, you're
totally
talking,
different.
Way over here. So. Anyway, all right, I'll take it up to all my other tertiary topics are off. So, the Ted Lasso, one other thing, your Ted Lasso, it's not airing this August.
Why? What's
so
happening?
Back to the voting period? Season 2 aired when season 1 voting was going on. Ted Lasso is not premiering in August this year, which kind of always reminds you of how the show was.
Yeah,
and this year it doesn't have that bump. I don't think it's going to be a big deal. I think they'll still get a lot of acting awards, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm not sure it's going to get best comedy this year.
I don't think it should. I think I love this. The second half of last season was the best like it's ever.
Yeah.
The first half was absolute garbage. And I'm like, I don't know what happened between the first 5 or 6 episodes and episodes 6 through 12. But and there are those.
They probably watched their shows and went, "This is garbage. Let's change."
Like, what happened?
Yeah, right.
What the fuck, where are we going with this? This is going nowhere.
We're supposed to be doing.
They also had those 2 very admittedly fluff episodes that they put in there. The Christmas episode and the Beard Goes After Dark. Because Apple's like, "Hey, we have more money. Do you want to write you up?" They're like, "Sure," which isn't exactly the measure of a best comedy series. So there are some. I think the love is still there. I think,
but when you vote on one episode. They give you one episode. I mean, you watch all thing, but they give you one.
Submitted episode 10, the funeral episode, which was fantastic. So
funeral episode was fantastic,
and I think
great episode.
Sudeikis will win off of that. But series wise, it is. The aggregate people that's to your point, Keith, about Yellowstone. Like, it wasn't the best season of this show. Maybe it had a great episode, but on the whole, the season wasn't. So there is some element to that.
So you're saying if it's not being broadcast during the voting season, people won't remember what they're voting for.
I'm just saying it helps to have the oh, I love that show. And
when you're watching it, and you have to vote on the previous season, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, this show is great. I'm gonna vote for this one.
And the marketing is back out there, and you're like, oh, this year it doesn't have because there's that period of voting, which essentially now until I think August 12th or something like that, when the voting ends, that's when you vote. So that's when it matters.
Right.
After that, before the show, doesn't matter. Yeah. So last year it had that bump of like, oh, Ted's back. Oh, great. Even though the first 3 episodes weren't good, whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
This year it doesn't have that. Not that I don't think it, but it is one thing that's like, we'll see. But
so when does it air? Because I'm going to set my calendar.
It hasn't been announced. Which is
I think that's a great show.
That is weird.
Well, I mean, they started a little bit later. I think this is the last season, or whatever, for batch of spinoffs and everything else.
Well, what's his name? The dude, supporting actor guy.
Will be it'll be the Roy fucking Kent show. It'll be so that'll be
The guy that plays Roy Kent he's
producing another show.
He's Hercules.
Yeah.
I just gave away the the scene after the credits scene. He's in it. Roy Kent, the actor plays Roy Kent, is in the next Thor movie with Russell Crowe.
Oh, is he the Marvel?
Is he Hercules?
He's Hercules.
Oh,
jeez, that's interesting.
I didn't read my.
So maybe
my
they're a
spoiler
bit too
alerts.
busy. Maybe they all got really, really popular, and they just got too busy. Like, that the original show. Now we're signing autographs and making other deals. We don't have time to make the show anymore.
We don't have time to do the show anymore.
Apple and Warner Brothers was backing up that the Briggs truck to those guys.
Yes.
Sudeikis probably will not
episode.
because he doesn't want to leave. He doesn't want to be in London, but I think which is hard. It's a hard no for his family, and I think he's rich enough at this point. He's not that kind of guy, but I think Brent will probably. And the rest of that cast would definitely show back up for,
right.
You know,
doing just fine. Yeah,
Heck yeah, they would.
Or Ted has a cousin named Ned. You know, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like whatever thing they get into. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, anything else from me, guys? Let me, Keith, you have my bio and all that stuff. If anything else
we're good.
That wise,
we're all good.
let me know.
I'll,
Thanks,
well, we should have the episode probably later tonight for YouTube. I can send it to you if you want to promote it on your newsletter. You're more than welcome. And then audio versions. We'll usually chase a few days after. So early next week.
Yeah.
We'll start popping on the podcast versions.
Cool. This is a lot of fun, guys. Thanks for
good time. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Good to see you. And be in touch anytime.
Sounds good.
All right, later.
Thanks, man.
Bye.
See ya.